episode number 52 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. My guest today is Nancy May. Nancy is a Hay House award-winning author who went from being in both physical and spiritual pain to healed through the power of alternative therapies. Her transformational experience inspired her to radically change professions, create the Energetic Fertility Method, become an award-winning author, and she now works helping people improve and even transform their lives. So welcome to the podcast, Nancy.
Thank you so much, Michelle. This is such a great honor. I'm so excited to be here and absolutely love your work.
I feel the same way, and I'm so happy to have you.
Thank
So I
you.
wanted to have the listeners hear about your journey on becoming an energy healer and also life and fertility coach.
Absolutely. It has definitely not been a straight trajectory. I actually was a passenger in a car accident many years ago and went through Western medical treatments. And this was in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I was working with one of the world-renowned TMJ, temporomandibular joint disorder doctors who had a 90+% cure rate, and nothing was working for me. And it was just bizarre. I mean, it was medication after medication, treatment after treatment. And after 6 months or so, I remember one of the doctors at the Stanford Pain Clinic telling me, "You'll have to learn to live with the pain." And I said, no, no, I'm not going to do that.
You.
And then I started doing some more alternative type healing, and that included craniosacral therapy and acupuncture. And lo and behold, I've never had the pain since. It's been great.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So during that time, I also did some training in mindfulness. So mindfulness-based stress reduction. Maybe you've heard it, John Kabat-Zinn's work.
Yes.
He's amazing. So I started doing that and really got deep into that. And then fast forward to my own time of wanting to become a mother and my fertility journey. And so, I delved in a bit more to meditation by this time. I was much more mindful about who I was and kind of how things worked in the world. And first time we tried, we got pregnant, and that was fine. First daughter came easy, everything worked out. And then when she was 1, we wanted to get pregnant again, got pregnant the first time again, but this one happened to end in a miscarriage, and I was absolutely devastated. It was like losing a spouse to me. Like, that's how devastated and kind of connected I was to this baby.
Yeah.
And then from that time forward, over a couple years, I just was not able to get pregnant. And I was working with an acupuncturist in the Bay Area, and she asked me if I was open to a more alternative way of looking at this. And I said, absolutely. And that was my introduction to a man named Walter McKitchen, who wrote a book called Spirit Babies. And
yes, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's a fabulous book, very esoteric. So if you are curious about spirit babies, I highly recommend the book. And so I ended up working with Walter, and lo and behold, lots of things happened. This particular spirit baby that I was working with didn't want to, she wasn't quite ready to come in. I know this kind of sounds esoteric probably for some listeners. However, it is part of my journey and why I ended up doing, why I do what I do now. But so she wasn't ready. We thought she was, and then there was a difficulty with the pregnancy, and so we terminated that pregnancy. And from that point on, I remember Walter saying, there's no way to know if she's ever going to be ready. And that there was another spirit baby close by. And so we invited in that new spirit baby and told this other spirit baby that if she was ready to come in as my grandchild or at a different time in another capacity, that was fine, but that I was getting
Mm-hmm.
older, and my human body could only carry a baby for so many years. I couldn't
Right.
create a baby on my own. Too long after that. And lo and behold, I did get pregnant right away and now have my beautiful second daughter.
Oh my God, how beautiful. I'm getting the chills as you're
Yeah.
speaking. I usually get I think that chills are they're an uncontrollable thing. And I do feel like when you get that, there's truth being told because your body's responding to what you're hearing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I ended up working with Walter McKitchen, through the pregnancy and afterwards, and up until the time of his death. So I ended up working with
Oh,
him for
wow.
6 years. And then right after that, I found another place that I did some more training with energy medicine. And it really is because of my work with Walter McKitchen and then my next mentor, Michael McCartney, that really led me down this path. And Michael
Yeah,
McCartney was the one who said, Nancy, you have so much training and you have so much knowledge, you need to write a book. And so I created the Energetic Fertility Method and wrote a book. And so here I am today through all of that.
that's awesome.
Yes, and I love what I
Amazing.
do. I mean, I'm a trained social science researcher. I have 2 master's degrees, one in cognitive psychology, one in clinical psychology. And so the left side of my brain is trained very well. And then through other interesting things happening in my life, that right side of my brain really opened up a lot. And
Mhm.
yeah, I love what I do.
Which I find so great because you're able to, and I noticed even as you were talking, you're able to connect with both types of people because you're saying, this is esoteric and this is, you're explaining it to somebody who's never heard of it before and may have never really conceived of it because ultimately some people are not necessarily against it. They just don't, they're not familiar with it. And their minds, it's a new thing. And I noticed that you were very aware of that as you were speaking, which I think is great because it really does speak to every language out there.
And that's one of the things I really try to do. And thank you for catching that, Michelle. I really appreciate it because I mean, so many different types of people come to me, people who've been on their,
Right.
spiritual journey for decades. And then people
Right.
who don't even, I mean, they've never done any energy work ever. And so I'm
Right.
their first kind of foray into this type of work. So it's
Hmm.
learning how to speak the language of the person to help them feel comfortable. Because if someone's not comfortable, I
Yes.
truly believe that the energy work is not going to do what it can do.
Oh my God, that's just such a great, it's so true. Like it's something that, it's so subtle. It's something that people may not realize, but it's true. People come in with all types of different languages, and I think as practitioners and people that are here to heal, it's so important. It's just kind of like something that I never really thought about. I think I naturally kind of do it, and I think you do, and certain people just naturally do that, but it is something that I think is so important is to be able to bridge that language gap, for some people that have never heard of it, where they're coming from to make them feel comfortable is just so key.
Absolutely, because if you would have asked me about energy medicine and this type of healing work that I do, if you would have asked me 25 years ago, I would have said, "Oh my gosh, what are you talking about? No way."
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah,
"Where?"
because it's foreign. It was
Yeah,
foreign.
yeah. Where's
Yeah.
the concrete evidence? That science
Yeah.
part of me wanted all the data. Yet,
Right.
this for me, the data for me was really my own experience and literally feeling
Exactly.
the difference of these two future children, whatever you want to call them,
Mhm.
spirit babies, in
Yes.
me, and they were so different, and it was so palpable, and so that
Yes.
that was my
Yeah.
own experiment.
Yes, and it was your own experience, and it's interesting to me because just the other day I was like speaking, and I started thinking about this, and I said, it's great to have scientific research. It's great because it validates a lot, but we can't just wait for that in order to give ourselves the validation to move forward into something unknown, because it's as if like we're waiting to use our own intuition. Why wait? Why wait for it to be proven? you know
I absolutely agree. And more science is catching up. And one of the
yeah.
ways I like to look at it is looking at things from a different perspective. So like putting on different types of glasses. Like
Hmm.
if I can only see one way of doing something, then I know I'm not looking at it from all different perspectives. And
Yes.
so that,
Yeah.
like, if I only, this, I have to do this career. That's the only thing I can do. Or
Hmm.
this is the only house for me, or this is the only
Hmm.
relationship for me. And I have to have it this way. Then I'm missing
Hmm.
something.
Right.
And that just helps me to remind myself, oh my gosh, can I look at this from like from a bird's eye view? Can I look at this from
Right.
above? Can I take myself out of this stuckness, if you will? And
Yes, because it's like this attachment to the outcome. It's an attachment to one way.
exactly, exactly. And that can really stagnate us. And
Yes.
unknowingly often, but once we become more aware of it, then it becomes easier to catch it next time.
Yes, and actually speaking of that, in infertility, and I say fertility like IN separate fertility because I try to, and I have used it before, but I try never to use infertility. I just don't
Mhm.
like that word because it feels like such a label, and it's many times untrue. And it's just like you went through. I mean, somebody could have said, "Oh, you have infertility." And you approached it through your own way of knowing, and you looked at it in a very different way than most people going through it. And also most people are going to doctors who are trained to see it in one specific way, which is a reactive way, because they react to the labs, they react to what is now, which we all know is ever changing. Now is not tomorrow. Everything changes within a moment.
Absolutely.
So, it's like we take a snapshot, which your hormone labs will change too, depending on what you do, in a year. And then they'll come in and say a completely different diagnosis and prognosis. So I find that an interesting thing because you take a little snapshot. I always used to say also when my kids were little and I go to the store and one day they'd be like angels and be like, and somebody would say, "Oh my God, you have the best behaved kids." And then another day they'd be really cranky and they'd scream. And people would look at me like, "Oh my God, your kids are," everybody just, it's one snapshot and people make a big conclusion off of. So based on that, a lot of people put a lot of trust in these practitioners and they agree with them. Subconsciously they'll agree with it, with the labels, and take it on as an identification of what is their condition. And so it's interesting because you were just talking about attaching to one thing, and that is really a lot of times what happens. People will attach to one type of identification based on these experts, and then also they'll get attached to one type of outcome. They only want a natural birth, and they get very disappointed, and they get traumatized by the whole process because it's out of their control. So that's what it
Yes,
seems. Yeah.
so true. Everything you just said is so true. And I think in our society, really look to medical professionals as having the answers.
Hmm.
And they, as you said, look at this from a certain perspective, which is a very helpful perspective in many ways. However, it's
Hmm.
not often the full picture for a lot of
Right.
people. A lot of other people, I really like to look more at a holistic type of view, not just one thing
Hmm.
or another, but finding, because everyone's energy is different. Everyone, like you were saying, there's a snapshot. This can change. This can change. Everyone on the planet is different. So what
Mm-hmm.
someone says about one person, you may have similar things going on, but what's going on for you energetically may be very different than that other person.
Right.
So I like looking at that. And that's where the different lenses come in. It's like, oh, they may present with the same conditions. However, what's really truly blocking them underneath may be very different, maybe the same or maybe similar, but it also may be very different. So to
Right.
not get stuck in these, it must be this way. Like I've been labeled with
Yes.
PCOS, or, I've been, whatever diagnosis or information you've been given, because all of that is energy. Every word is energy. Everything
Yes.
someone says, all of our thoughts are energy. And if someone says, oh, you're too old, you can't get pregnant, and we take that into heart and we take that
Mm-hmm.
into us, then yes, we're going to have a harder time getting pregnant because we believe what they're
Yes.
saying. So
Right.
there's a big part in and really becoming more aware of how we take and interpret what other people say. Do we basically like take it like the Bible, right? Okay, yes, it's
Yes.
truth. This
Mm-hmm.
professional said it. This has to be the way. Or do we take it as, yeah,
I was going to say, it's interesting that there are certain personality types that like to follow authority. It makes them feel safe.
and absolutely. And that is a good thing to know about yourself. And every once in
Yes.
a while, like when I work with someone who is in that capacity, I remind them about their own empowerment. I like to remind them about their choices, which is why
Yes.
when people work with me, I don't record the session. I don't take notes for them. What I do for them is encourage them to take their own notes, to record it on their own, because in a way, that's giving them the empowered approach, right? Letting them
Right.
be in charge of their own learning, their own way of working with things. So that's like a small thing that I like to do to help people become even more empowered. Because when we're constantly following, we're also
Mm-hmm.
really looking for someone to make the choices for us, and we're not taking responsibility. And
Absolutely.
to be on a spiritual journey, which is part of what I look at, right? That's just part of who I am. But to be on a
Yeah.
spiritual journey, we do need to start taking more and more responsibility for our choices. And
Yes.
that plays into how we think, how we treat ourselves. How is that internal critic in us? Does she really need a long vacation? Does she need
Mm-hmm.
some love and attention, and just reminding that, yes, you can take a break now. Those
Yeah.
sorts of things. It is important to start paying attention to that, I think, for all of us, because we live in a fear-based culture.
We do. We really do. And we are more controlled than we realize. There's a lot of subliminal messages we're constantly bombarded with.
Absolutely. And that's, something I am very mindful of. And I really like to take some time every day just to turn off electronics and to make sure I have at least a few moments to myself where I can connect more internally than just
Hmm.
being bombarded with everything outside of us, which is kind of those controlling factors and things that really make us, well, unfortunately, make us feel not so good about ourselves all the time. Like we're
Hmm.
lacking something,
Yes.
we're missing something, we're not good enough. There's comparisons. There's, oh, you know, um, you know. Anyhow, yes.
Yes. No, I agree. I agree. Listen, I do agree. On the one hand, you don't want to think about it too much, but on the other hand, you should know that it exists because then you are aware. So it's an important kind of it's a real good balance of not focusing too much, but at the same time knowing and being aware of it.
Absolutely, because the only way we really can change things is with awareness. Because
Hmm.
if we're not aware and we're just like walking through life out of habit, whether they're familial patterns or cultural patterns, and we don't, like I said, have that awareness, we can't change those patterns.
Exactly.
Until we understand and have a little more meaning behind it, and that awareness of, oh my gosh, okay, wow, I really do say those things to myself. I didn't realize that I was constantly using that should word, or next time I got to do it better, like those, like really not using words of encouragement, so to speak, but more of blame or not good enough.
Yes, I call it mental hygiene. If you really
Yes.
think about what's going on in your mind, like what are you really thinking about? Most of the time it's so subtle that we don't even realize it's happening. And when we start to bring in mindfulness, then we start to, oh my God, wow. Like I didn't realize that these are the thoughts that were going and circulating through my mind.
Absolutely. And that's something that if you have, a dear friend or a therapist or another, practitioner or family member who can be neutral about it, right? Who's not going to judge,
Yeah,
and they
right.
can help start pointing some of those things out. It can be really useful because, as you said, it is very subtle. And we don't
Hmm.
necessarily realize that we have gotten into these patterns of almost berating ourselves and really like uh, pulling the joy away from ourselves even more.
Yeah. So if you do you when you do get people, and everybody, I mean, everybody has blocks. Everybody has some block or another, and everybody has blind spots. How do you help your clients work through those blocks?
So when I'm working with someone, I do use some intuitive skills of my own to help give them information about what's
Mhm.
going on in their energy field. And part of
Mhm.
it may even be we have a conversation up front, and sometimes I can catch things that people are saying and bring those to their attention. So it is a lot about bringing awareness to certain things, um,
Mhm.
like what how they say certain things. They may be a perfectionist. I know that type A personality very well, and it's something
Mhm.
I continue to work with in myself often. So pointing things
Yeah.
out to people, and then every time I work with someone, I do give them tools and exercises that they can do on their own to help them increase their awareness even more, and to help them let go of this energy that is in their field that is keeping them blocked or stagnant. So certain types of exercises might be a grounding or centering exercise. For me, that's really key for
Mhm.
people, is really being a little more centered, a little more grounded, because most of us do not walk around in a grounded state. Um,
Yeah.
and then other things, a lot of people that come to work with me are very sensitive in terms of their energy system, so that they may be empaths. And so they may pick
Mhm.
up a lot of other people's energies. So this simple technique of separating your energy from someone else's, and and on and on and on. There's so many tools and techniques, and I can tell if someone's done the work or not. And just energetically, like
Mhm.
when they come back, I can see how their energy has shifted. So if
Yeah.
someone wants someone else to do the work, I'm not the good fit. If someone wants to come and get some information about things and find some efficient and easy tools to utilize to help shift the
Mhm.
energy, then I'm probably a good fit for them.
Right. And I agree with you 100% on that. I have the same thing. The people that walk into my office who really are ready to take charge of their life, and somebody, I had an acupuncturist on the show. Her name is Heidi Brockmeyer,
Oh,
and
yes, I know her, yes.
said she said something that I loved. It really put it in such a great way, is I like to partner up with my patients. I love that. It's a
Absolutely.
partnership.
Absolutely. And that's, how you said, some of the people have this personality of kind of being a follower, if you will.
Mhm.
And for me, I if someone says, "Oh, Nancy, you're so great. Thank you so much." I really like to explain that we're on the same plane. Like I have
Mm-hmm.
some skills, I may have some information that you don't have, but you're also going to have a lot of gifts that I don't necessarily have. So it's
Right.
not this hierarchy. It's just we're sharing information. We are partnering.
Yes.
Like if there are some things that we can each bring to one another, because I learn from my clients all the time. Every single client, there's
Yes.
something I can learn
Yeah.
more about myself, and that it really is beautiful. And to kind of piggyback on what Heidi said, I also, if people are working with practitioners and they want to, sign a release for me and want me to talk with their medical doctor, naturopathic doctor, acupuncturist, chiropractor, therapist, I love doing that because we each can see things from a different perspective and may have the
Yeah.
tools to be able to help them to get further along their journey faster than with just one modality or us not communicating and really working together as a team.
I love the phrase, it takes a village. And you know what? It takes a village to raise a child, and it also takes a village to conceive a child. It really, to get a bunch of different perspectives. And that's why we're so good together. That's why people are so good collectively, because we all have our own superpowers. And if you combine them, there's no telling what you'll do.
Absolutely. And I love the way that you put that, the superpowers, and just, and
Hmm.
it's so true. It really is. And it's such a beautiful thing when we can come together and not have that competition and just really work for the betterment of the client, and each of us.
Yes. So, what does, I love this word personally, but I wanted to see what you felt about it. What does the word alignment mean to you?
That's a great word. And
Isn't it?
for me, it's multifaceted for me. When I think of
Hmm.
alignment, um, ideally, it's what we're working towards, and it's alignment of body,
Hmm.
mind, and spirit. And for me, this requires a lot of integration and may not happen quickly. It may take lifetimes for us to fully achieve this alignment in kind of that ideal state.
Yeah.
In more of like a tangible sense, you can look at, alignment can be physical. It could be, working on posture, which from an energetic perspective does make a difference. And, you may work with someone with chiropractic care, acupuncture, other energy medicine techniques to help with that beautiful alignment on that physical aspect of us, right? We need to be mindful of that body because it's
Yeah.
such a huge thing. And I think we take advantage and we forget about our body because usually we don't say anything nice to our bodies. The
Right.
only time we pay attention to our physical body is when something's not going right or we're in
Right.
pain.
Yeah.
And so aligning that physical body is a lot about, talking with it from a beautiful, I mean, that's some of the exercises I give people, like literally write a letter to your reproductive system.
Mm.
That is
Love that.
that is one simple way you can help to start aligning that physical aspect of you. And it will also, because it's energetic, it's all energy. Every part of our reproductive system, every part of our body is energy.
Hmm. It is.
How do you feel when someone berates you versus someone really sends loving energy towards you? Think about,
Yeah. It's a contraction and expansion.
yes, yes. And if you're trying to conceive and all you're doing is berating your physical body, it's in a constracted
Mm.
state. It's like this,
Right.
the analogy I like to use is that closed fist.
Yes.
And then if you start sending some loving thoughts, some like, oh my gosh, I really apologize. I didn't realize that I had forgotten about you or really not said loving things towards you. I didn't realize that it was so important to bring you along on board. And I value everything you do. I really value the fact that I don't have to think about what you do most of the time, and I would really love to be able to, change our relationship and to be on, better and more alignment with you. I mean, these letters can be anything. I did have one client who said, "Oh my gosh, Nancy, I had no idea I had so much to say to my reproductive system. I wrote 20 pages."
Wow.
She wrote 20
Oh,
pages.
wow.
Yeah. So the physical aspect in alignment. And then, we have aligning the mind, which we've touched upon quite a bit in our conversation thus far. Really becoming more
Mhm.
mindful of how we speak to ourselves, how we speak to other people, how we,
Mhm.
do all sorts of things, in looking at belief systems, cultural norms that we subscribe to, familial patterning, that internal critic that we talked about, and
Mhm.
the fact that thoughts really are energy and we truly can create what we want. And an interesting story is I remember someone telling me that, Nancy, you're just an amazing manifester. I'm like, oh, I don't know what you mean by that. And I was thinking, yeah, some things work out my way and other things don't. What I didn't
Right.
realize at the time is I really was a good manifester and that I was also manifesting my
Mhm.
fears in many ways. And then
Right.
this was a huge wake up call to me, and to remember that, fear is also an energy, just like
It
everything
sure is.
else. and
Yeah.
and what I started to do then was to really pay more attention to my fears, where they were coming from, and to use it more as a motivator and not something to inhibit my growth.
Right. That's a really, really great way to look at it, because it's like nothing's wasted.
Yeah, because that fear energy, sure, we live in this fear-based culture, as we've mentioned, and fear can be a great motivator. And that, I think, is
Mhm.
also helping to align the mind. When we don't give fear the control, it's like, oh, there you are again. You're telling me something. And
Right.
I do want to share this other thing. Just earlier this year, believe it or not, I was just minding my own business and some intuitive information came floating in. And it was
Mhm.
about fear. And it really was this connection between fear and forgiveness. And
Mm.
I had never put those two together. And so what came to me was, oh my gosh, so whenever I feel a fear, can I get to where it came from? Like, was it something a teacher said? Was it something, I heard on social media? Was it something from my family? Where did this
Mhm.
fear come from? And then can I send some forgiveness towards that, either myself, like, oh, wow, I carried that fear for so long, towards that person, not condoning their behavior if they did something that was, unethical, etc. However, if we
Mhm.
carry that energy with us, we're carrying this heavy baggage. And if
It's true.
and it can create these huge fears, like, they were so mean to me, I can never do that again, I'm never going to, all that. That creates a really heaviness in us. If we can instead, like, offer some forgiveness towards the situation, realizing we all make mistakes, some more grave than others. And then, the Hawaiian forgiveness chant is a beautiful one, Ho'oponopono. I mean, you can Google that and find
Mm.
it. But that's a super simple way of adding that forgiveness in there. But I thought it was a really cool way of looking at fear and not letting fear have so much energy and so much control over my life.
Right.
And so that,
That is beautiful.
yeah,
And it is something that we carry so much without even realizing we're carrying so much.
right, exactly. Yep. And then the last part of this alignment for me is aligning the soul. And this is a
Mm.
bit more esoteric. So, my belief system is that we have more than one lifetime. I think this human existence, we're here to learn so much, and there's no way to do that in one lifetime. And
Yeah.
so,
True.
we may have picked up patterns that are not healthy for us over these various lifetimes. And there are ways that we can, again, in very esoteric energy medicine type ways, we can
Mm-hmm.
do some work around that and kind of align the soul into something that's a little more healthy for you at this time. And this type of work is not often easy, and it's definitely not for folks who want someone else to fix them. This is for
Mm-hmm.
someone who is ready to shift things and go really deep.
It's interesting too because the resistance that may come for a lot of people doing it is this is too inconvenient. It's too much work, but I actually think it's quite the opposite. It's inconvenient not to.
And I agree with you. And again, because of my belief system and having more than one lifetime, I figure if I don't work on it now, it's just going to keep coming up in these different lifetimes, and I'm going to have to work on it at
Yeah.
some point. So I might as well
Yeah.
take the time and do it here.
Yeah.
And it's, if you think about it, when we learn the most, it is when things are not easy. It's when we go through those challenging experiences and get to the other side. We do not
Right.
learn as much and grow as much if things are always easy.
Yep. It's true. Take a look, an honest look at what's happening and allow the challenges to almost like I love it how Michael Singer in the book The Untethered Soul,
Mm.
he talks about leaning into it.
Yes, and that's it. This is not, and I, at the beginning of this topic about alignment, I talked about integration. If we're like trying to
Mhm.
plow through and go so fast, it's so hard to lean in and integrate. Like if we're like,
Yeah.
it takes some time. And when people are talking to me and on this, I can see that there's spirits going, at light speed. Their physical body is so much denser and takes more
Hmm.
time to integrate. So I like explaining that to people that yes,
Yes.
you may be seeing things from a spiritual perspective and really like, yep, I see where I'm going, I'm headed, blah, blah, blah. However, if we go so
Yeah.
quickly, it can really lead to, disease. It can lead to you might, your physical body might create something to slow you down.
Yes. And also, especially for a lot of women going through this whole journey, it's very traumatic and it is a lot like PTSD. And I think it's important to acknowledge that or allow them, for them to have that time of just really feeling just the feelings about it. Whether it's just kind of going through a morning of going through a morning of your expectations, really thinking that things are going to be one way and then they're not, allowing that to settle in and to digest it and to give it almost its own respect and honor, for that time. But of course, you can't live in that because if you do, that's going to cause disease too. So, just allowing that process, I think it has its place.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're bringing this up because one of the things I really like to encourage people to do, whether, they've had a miscarriage, whether they are, there's some other obstacle in their way, is to really have, uh, you know, an honoring ceremony, ritual,
Hmm.
whatever you want to call it, for that chapter in their life, to really what did you learn from it, and if it was a miscarriage or something like that, to really honor the presence of the baby that was with you and for the time it was with you, to really bring in like the beauty of it, not just all the heaviness with it, not all the
Yeah.
horror or whatever you want to call it, but to also
Hmm.
acknowledge these harder feelings, and then the fact that yes, there was some beauty in this too. There was,
Yeah.
you came, you touched my heart. I really honor you for that.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think that's super important to talk about and to and I if someone's been through a pregnancy termination, I think it's huge because in our huge to talk about and to give space to, because in our culture,
Yes.
there's a lot of people who will judge you about that, and it's really, I mean, with judgment, it's all about fear. That's really
Mm-hmm.
what it is. It's all about fear. And we make a decision at one point, we do it for whatever reason. We don't have to judge someone for that.
Yeah,
If we are,
we don't.
yeah, if someone's going to judge someone else, I really encourage, well, like for all of us, if we judge anyone about anything, what is it in us that we need to look at?
Yes,
So I
absolutely.
Yeah, so I think the termination for a lot of clients is one of the biggest things because there can be so much stigma, there can be so much guilt around that, and just things from other people, those judgments from other people that can be so heavy. And I mentioned I terminated a pregnancy, and for me, it was very much a spiritual process because this particular spirit baby had karma to deal with, and she wasn't ready to deal with that karma. Like she thought she was over it, and she really wasn't. And
Right.
it was, I mean, it was really for her best and highest good as well, not to continue with that pregnancy because it wasn't going to be a healthy pregnancy. It wasn't. So there's so many reasons we don't.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very tough. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very tough. It really is and I've known people that had to go through that, and it's really, really hard.
It is. So again, thank you, Michelle, for bringing up the topic of the emotional aspect of things because this fertility journey can be a huge roller coaster and really challenging. I know it was for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly enlightening too in a weird way. Like, you always in every single thing there's the yin and the yang. There's the dark and the light.
Yes.
You in everything.
And I would not be the person I am today if I did not have that fertility journey the way that it went. And
Mhm.
so many beautiful things came out of it because I learned so much about myself. I learned all these places where I really was stuck and I didn't realize it. And I learned a
Yeah.
lot about being in relationship with myself and also with other people, and learning how to take information and not always internalize it, not always give someone else the control, whether it's the medical doctor or whomever, to really sink in and feel in my own being what feels right for me.
Yes. And I've heard so many stories about people listening to their bodies and going for that second opinion because their bodies responded to the first opinion. And it ended up being that other things were uncovered that were missed and could have gone a completely different path.
Abs-
You know,
Absolutely.
a not so great path had they not listened to their intuition.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, this is one of those times where I really feel like for many of us, if not all of us, this fertility journey is an opportunity for us to learn so much more about ourselves. And that's where I feel like so much of even being able to communicate with your future child comes from, is that knowing ourselves on a deeper level.
Yes. And so, on that point of the future child, how do you see that alignment occurring? And you went through it yourself. You literally like went through the ceremony and really connected with that energy. And so I just find that so fascinating because I did have a dream about my second daughter in, after having a chemical pregnancy before having my first. So it was just, and I lost it, and I had a dream about her, and I know it was her because she had blonde hair and blue eyes, and I have brown hair and brown eyes. My husband has brown hair and green eyes. She came out like I look like a nanny, you know. So it was such an unusual thing that seeing her with long blonde hair in my dream was a memory that I had, and to the point where I almost thought, did I, like, was that real? And I asked my husband, he goes, you told me about it. So he confirmed with me that she came to me in my dream way before she came to me in real life. And so I really, this whole alignment thing is so fascinating to me. So I wanted just to hear you talk about that a little bit more.
So alignment in terms of future children and bringing them in. And
Yes.
yes.
Yes, yes.
So
Yeah.
bringing in future children, it's multifaceted. When someone comes to me and wants to talk about this, I often say there's millions of things we could talk about when it comes to bringing in a future child.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people are surprised to hear that. However,
Yeah.
we have free will. Our partner has free will if we are with a partner. I work with a lot of people who it's single moms by choice as well, and different permutations
Mhm.
of partnerships. And then the future child also has free will too. So the alignment really
Right.
really starts with us. A lot of people are, looking at the physical aspect of things, looking at nutrition, looking at, all those sorts of things that are probably more tangential, or not tangential, but more concrete for us. Like we have books on nutrition that are easily followed. We can get information about that. But that, believe it or not, can help you to shift your energy enough to start connecting more with your future child. So the
Mm.
aligning with your
Yeah.
future child. So when we think about communicating, we do it from our analytical mind, right? We think up there. We've got our brain. It's so important, and it does so many wonderful things for us. When we want to communicate with our future child, we need to do it from the heart, and that's where I think people get
Mhm.
tripped up. Because our analytical mind, that mental aspect of us, is very dense and very heavy from an energetic perspective. And then when we can come more and more into our heart space, whether that's through meditation, there's a lot of things that we can do to help bring us into our heart space a bit more. Um, but when we can come into our heart space a bit more, that energy in our heart is of a higher vibration, and it's
Right.
easier to connect with our future child who's in the spirit realm. At least that's how I look at it. These
Mhm.
spirit babies. And so connecting through the heart, that's how I connect with them. That's how I talk with them, is through my heart space, through that energy of my heart, because they are in this
Mhm.
beautiful unconditional love energy. And our heart is able to get there much more than our analytical brain can.
Mhm.
So, one of the first things you need to do if you want to communicate with your future child and come into more alignment with your future child is you have to believe you can. If you
Oh,
if you
yes.
don't think you can communicate with your future child, it's going to be like anything else. We're going to create blocks, and we're going to really make it more challenging to be able to communicate with our future child. And I'm going to bring
Mhm.
in that perspective thing as well when I talked about looking at things from different perspectives. So if we think talking with our future child is going to be exactly like a conversation like you and I are having, or like you would have with your best friend or your partner, um, well, I invite you to think about it from a different perspective. These future children speak in very subtle ways. It might be through dreams, it might be through symbols or tones or sounds. It might be a song you hear on the radio. It might be, a beautiful bunch of butterflies in a very unusual space. It could be
Mhm.
like you hear a ringing in your ear. There's so many different ways. I mean, you can feel like, oh my gosh, did something actually just brush the side of my cheek? That could be your
Mhm.
spirit baby letting you know that they're there, letting you know that there's a
Mm.
connection.
Just got the chills again.
Yeah. So one of the blocks is really that I see, and the blocks to alignment is not believing you can communicate. So that's the
Right.
shift that, and then coming to your heart space. So some things I do, I literally will put my hands on my heart space to remind myself to come there, and then I may focus on my breath a little bit, and to really just remind myself, okay, All right, come back to my heart. And if I have a ground, I have a grounding practice. But if someone has a little meditation practice or a way that they ground and get more centered in their body, I invite them to do that before trying to connect with their future child.
Right. Beautiful. You know what's interesting is that there is a vessel in Chinese medicine, very important vessel actually for conception. It connects the heart to the uterus.
That
It's
totally
incredible.
makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
I
Isn't
love
that
it.
validation?
Oh, I love it. Thank you I was not aware of that, but I'm a huge smile on my face because it just makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does.
So a couple of easy ways to bring yourself into more alignment with your future child is one, especially if you have a partner who's very concrete, which seems to happen a lot with women who come to me and their male partner is not quite as open to
Mm-hmm.
this type of work, is writing a letter to your future child.
Mm,
Literally tell your future child, be as authentic as you can be, because remember, this is when you're more authentic, you're in that heart space.
right.
You can also be very, very creative in this aspect of connecting with your future child. Maybe you create a vision board. Maybe you read or sing to your future child. Maybe you make a collage, or you draw
Mm.
something or paint something. Paint a picture for your future child. It's really about getting out of your analytical mind as much as you can and allowing more creative flow to come through.
I would also imagine by doing that, there would be just so many tears. And, what's better to really remove those blocks? It's truly leaning into those emotions is by, I could just imagine that, for a lot of people that are going through so much trauma, writing that letter would be, difficult and liberating all at the same time.
Absolutely. And I love what you say about the liberating. That's a great word because that's what it is. You're liberating your energy, right?
Yeah.
You're freeing it from that block, from that stagnation, if you will.
Yeah.
And yeah, so writing can be super powerful. And one other kind of easy thing, if you will, to help connect you and align you more with your future child is visualizing, sensing, or even intending a beautiful line of energy from your heart area to your future child's heart area. And
Mm.
it could be like a
Wow.
wide laser pointer going from your heart to your future child's heart. So if someone's very visual, then just visualize it. But if there are listeners who are not as visual, you can sense it or just even intend that there's this beautiful line of energy from your
Hmm.
heart to your future child's heart and infuse that connection with love.
I
And it
love
may
that.
be that you say something out loud in your mind's eye to your future child, like, I love you. Maybe you send a loving image through that heart connection to your future child. It can be whatever you want. It can be a sound that's very loving for you. But that's another beautiful way to start connecting and aligning yourself more with your future child.
That is so beautiful. I love it. It's important. I think for humans in general, we've been doing this for thousands of years, and I feel like maybe we've lost it, or maybe we're doing it unconsciously. But ritual and adding sacredness to ritual, because we do rituals. We go on social media every day. We go to Starbucks. I mean, we do unconscious rituals, but rituals are part of our being. And when we infuse sacredness into our rituals, I just feel like it elevates us to a whole. It creates more meaning, and it's so important. So 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 important.
Wholeheartedly agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And I love that you pointed out, the social media and the Starbucks and these unconscious rituals that we often do,
Yeah.
or maybe slightly conscious. And, some people say, oh, I don't have time to do things. I'm like, well, how often are you on social media? How much TV
Yeah.
do you watch each
Good
day?
point.
Can you
Good
and
point.
for me, when I was grounding and learning how to ground, I had a very busy life. And I'm like, how can I add this in? I literally, because the efficient person I like to be, I literally started grounding, dropping a grounding cord, visualizing and whatever, all that, while I was in the restroom, because I had to sit down anyway. I was going to be
That's
by
great. I
myself
love
for a moment. I
it.
had to do it several times a day.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, no more excuses.
Right.
Hey, there's a place to be able to do this. So
Yes.
even
No
if you,
rules. Just
like,
do it.
yeah, yeah. So if you're on the toilet and even taking a couple of deep breaths, like putting your hands on your heart, an in breath and an out breath, even that much can shift your energy. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
because where your attention goes, it makes things grow. So,
right.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, are there any inspiring stories that you can share?
There are many.
I know.
So,
There
um,
must be.
so there's a wonderful couple that I worked with, and they had been actually I still work with them, but they'll start kind of back at the beginning. So they had been on their fertility journey for 7 years, and they were very spiritual in nature. They had a lot of shamanic practices. They did some teaching of shamanic things, so they were deep into their spiritual journey.
Hmm.
She was in her 40s. He was in his 50s. They had had 3 miscarriages, and of course, a lot of frustration and challenges along the way.
Hmm.
And they were wondering what was blocking them in terms of being able to bring in their child. So we worked together and looked at the future children around them and talked with them, and based on where their energy system was, I gave them some tools and exercises to help them along their way, and they took this information and the tools and exercises and ran with it. And literally after one session they got pregnant. So
Oh,
remember,
wow.
7 years. We continued to work together during the pregnancy and after the birth of their beautiful daughter. And whenever I think about the couple and their daughter, it always brings a smile to my face, because I truly, and this may again sound esoteric to some people, I truly feel like sometimes it's the spirit babies that bring the families to me, so that
Mm,
they can connect more, and whatever, if there's not a block that the family can figure out, that I may have a little bit of insight into and help them by giving them information. They have to do the work. Like, I'm not here going to shift someone's energy. If I do, I create karma for myself and I disempower them.
right.
That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to
Yeah.
help empower people and to bring them information. But this was a fabulous outcome for someone, for this couple who had been thriving for 7 years in natural pregnancy in her 40s. He was in his 50s. So
That's
that's one
incredible.
beautiful one.
Incredible. Yeah,
It, I love that. I mean, it just, like I said, it just warms my heart, because people say, oh, you're in your 40s, you can't get pregnant,
exactly.
yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. Definitely yada
And
yada yada.
then,
Because it's
yes,
it's all rules and labels that we give ourselves, like Mhm.
it sure is. And then, so another woman came to me because she and her partner had been through 4 rounds of IVF, and they were getting ready for their 5th and most likely final round of IVF. And they were going to be starting with the egg retrieval process and everything in about 3 months. They had been trying to conceive for about a year and a half. She was in her early 40s. He was in his mid 40s. And health-wise, they were not necessarily, the healthiest of people. And they knew that. I mean, the doctors had mentioned it, and they knew that each of them could have um, potentially lost some weight, those sorts of things.
Mhm.
And there were some health concerns. However, they were taking steps to start going down, eating a little more in a healthy fashion,
Mhm.
getting a little more exercise, like doing some walking and things like that. So they had started down that trajectory, which I validated, energetically, and gave them some tools and tips based on nutrition and other things to help them
Mhm.
out. So they had had one miscarriage from one of the rounds of IVF. 2 rounds of IVF didn't produce a pregnancy, and one of the egg retrieval processes didn't result in any healthy embryos. So we worked together, and we worked together sometimes with just the woman, and then sometimes it was the couple that and so in this time that we worked together and so the 3 months up until the beginning of the egg retrieval process, she had some tools and techniques that she started implementing, such as grounding that we've talked about, and just becoming a little bit more mindful and learning how to start connecting with your future child, which we talked about. We gave you a few, we talked about a few techniques here in the conversation today. So these tools and exercises helped her to stay a little bit more centered and connected to herself, to learn how to connect more deeply with her future child. And lo and behold, yes, this 5th round of IVF worked well.
Oh, that's amazing.
So we worked off and on during the process and also during the pregnancy too. And her son is now around a year old. And I actually just spoke with her maybe a month or two ago because she's thinking about having a second child,
Oh,
doing
wow.
another round because they froze some eggs.
Mm,
And so that's another one
yeah.
that I really like. And you had mentioned something earlier that reminded me of a third story that I'd love to mention real quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
this is about one of the most spiritual people I know
Mm-hmm.
came to me, started working together. We worked together for a few years, and she was adamant about not going the IVF route. It had to be natural. It had to be that way. Like they had to conceive naturally. She was in kind of this holistic field. That's where her career was. So she was very anti-Western medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, a couple years into this process, working together, she realized what her block was really being so adamant towards Western medicine.
Mm-hmm.
That because you had talked about that a little bit up front, just this one way of being, it has to be this way, and
Yeah.
that can create a block. And so they ended up, and she was 47 at the time when they ended up doing a round of IVF. They had enough money to do one round, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, 47, he was
Wow.
47 as well. One round of IVF, their son must be close to 2.5.
Oh my God. I love that story. That's awesome. See, there you go. 47. I mean,
47, and again doing all the spiritual work, yet
yes.
what she needed to do was open up and not be and I get all tingly as I say this, not be so adamant about having it one certain way. And sometimes it's just even opening up and expanding to the possibility of okay, no, I've never been for IVF, I'm not going to do it. But even opening up to that possibility
Mm-hmm.
can allow more energy to come in, and you may not need to go down that road of IVF. It may come in naturally. And I see that happen a lot too.
Yes, I have.
But
I've seen that. Yeah,
yeah, it's fascinating.
it
So
is.
again, yeah, 3 very different ways of people coming to work with me, and having it all come out in different ways for them, and in a beautiful way for each of them.
That's amazing. I love the stories. And for people who are listening that are like, oh my God, I have to get in touch with her, how can people find you? Because I'm sure
Uh,
there are people like, oh my God, blown away.
my website is my name, nancymay.com. So NANCYMAE.com. That's one great way to connect with me. You can learn more about my work, and you can, if you're interested in a session, by all means, feel free to sign up. And I do offer a sliding scale that's talked about on my website. And then I have the book out called The Energetic Fertility Method, Tools for a Healthy Conception and Beyond. And you can get that on Amazon.com, if you're interested in that. And there are, one other quick story. There was a woman who just recently contacted me via email, and she said, "Nancy, thank you so much for writing your book. I've been trying to get pregnant for a long time. I've had PCOS and et cetera, et cetera. And I read your book, and within a week, I got pregnant."
Oh my God. Wow.
So just to let you know, and when there are things that can happen, and
Yes.
and yeah,
It's
we'll leave it
beautiful.
at
I
that.
love it. It's hope. It's really
Yeah.
bringing hope. And I think this whole episode has been all about hope. And I love it because that's the one thing that I always hear is a feeling of hopelessness for a lot of people going through the journey and not having people like you or, support to hear that it could be different. And so I thank you so much for coming on and saying this. And also, I just want to mention that all the links that Nancy had just talked about are going to be on the episode notes. So in case you missed anything, you want to look, it's all going to be on there. And this has been a true pleasure for me. I'm very aligned with your teaching and what you say. It's so much fun for me. I really do believe in the spirit, the mind, and how everything is so interconnected and that we have a lot more power than we believe we do. So I thank you so much for coming on, Nancy. This was a complete pleasure for me.
Oh, and thank you. Likewise, Michelle. This has just been a joy for me. I'm so excited about your work as well. And it just is such an honor to be here and be able to share some information with people that hopefully is very helpful for them.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to leave a review. Reviews are everything to podcasters. You can find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com. And please be on the lookout for my online course and program. This course has emerged from everything that I've been using for the fertility program I now offer at my office. I wanted to consolidate all of my suggestions and coaching and put it into a form that anyone can purchase and use. It was important for me to encompass key fertility health factors as well as guide you in implementing changes in your routine that are shown to boost fertility while being realistic and user-friendly. I will be offering this course with and without coaching. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com, where you can find the subscription form. I thank you so much for listening in and hope you have a beautiful day